My name is Mike. I'm 30 years old and work in HR. I work at the head office of a major mass retailer that has many stores across the country, so I'm very busy every day. I've been married to my wife Sylvia for 5 years. She's 2 years younger than me. We met when we first graduated and started working at one of my company's stores. I was the one who showed her the ropes at work. When she had finished her training a month after joining the company, Sylvia suggested we exchange phone numbers. I thought she was cute, so didn't give it much thought and gave Sylvia my phone number. Even though I didn't realize it then, that was the moment that changed my life forever. Right after we exchanged phone numbers, Sylvia began strongly coming on to me. I was older than her and hadn't thought about having a relationship with her until then, but she had a bit of a pushy personality. She bridged the gap between us and we began dating in no time. After 1 year of dating, we got married. I work for the company's main office, so weekends and holidays are my days off. But since Sylvia worked for one of our stores, weekends and holidays were her busiest days. Our days off would line up a few times a month, and when they did, we would always go out somewhere or enjoy making dinner at home together. Sylvia was always very busy at her store, but her sales performance wasn't good. Our company didn't have very strict quotas or anything, but we had general expectations for our salespeople. 3 years after joining the company, Sylvia hadn't met her quotas even once. Apart from that, at her store, Sylvia was considered the worst among all the employees there. Because of that, since joining the company, Sylvia's salary didn't go up at all. Working at a main office must be nice. You sit at a desk all day and get a good salary. You exploit the bottom of the barrel people like us to get raises and promotions for yourselves, don't you? She would attack me like that sometimes. It was true that most of my job was desk work, but I was in HR, so I would also have to train employees, like how I trained Sylvia. I also had to recruit people and conduct interviews. I definitely did some running around. I tried to explain that to Sylvia, but she didn't listen at all. Ultimately, after 3 years and a bit, Sylvia couldn't deal with the company expectations anymore, and she quit. But she didn't discuss this with me at all. I found out that Sylvia had submitted a resignation letter from my colleague in HR. She was my wife, but she didn't talk to me about it. I couldn't hold in my anger. "Why did you quit without telling me?" I asked her in a strong voice, but she just let out a deep sigh. "I was tired of being used, so I quit." I was sick of her self-centered way of thinking. She continued, "Actually, I'm thinking of becoming a YouTuber. If I do that, no one will use me anymore, and I think it'll suit me, so please support me." Becoming famous enough on YouTube to make money? Out of all the people who have YouTube channels, only a small fraction of them can actually make a living off of that. Sylvia should know that. When she decided to become a YouTuber, Sylvia became very energetic every day. Since she quit her job, she started doing housework during the week. "Until I make money from YouTube, I'll be relying on the money you earn, so leave the housework to me." She took initiative and did most of the chores, while I would just have to do a bit of cleaning and laundry on the weekend. Sylvia also began cooking all of our meals. She said that since she quit her job, cooking had become a hobby of hers. Until then, Sylvia had never cooked for us. So being able to come home with dinner was ready and waiting was refreshing. Being able to eat homemade dinner as soon as you get home, I realized how happy that could make me. At first, she would make mistakes, like burning hamburgers or overcooking pasta, but Sylvia never got discouraged and she continued to cook every day. I thought it was cute watching her try so hard. But when she learned to cook better, all the food she cooked began tasting strangely. In the past, even if she overcooked her food a bit, it was still tasty. Has she gotten exhausted from cooking? The taste is strange. She must be tired. When I'd eat, I'd get sleepy. Recently, as soon as I'd finish eating, I'd get sleepy and want to go to bed. I found it a bit strange, so I brought it up to Sylvia lightly, but she lashed out at me. "What? Are you trying to say I'm drugging your food?" Sylvia suddenly got into a terrible mood, panicking. I told her that's not it. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm really grateful that you've been cooking. Maybe I'm just tired these days." "Yeah, you're overworking yourself." Sylvia's mood improved and I was relieved, but something was bothering me. The next day, when I was eating lunch at my company's canteen with my colleague and friend Bobby, I brought up what was happening at home. Recently, I get super tired as soon as I eat dinner. When I first brought it up, Bobby also said, "You've been working really hard these days, so aren't you just tired out from that?" Bobby seemed concerned about me, but when he heard what I said next, his attitude changed. I tried talking to Sylvia about it yesterday, and she got mad and asked me if I was accusing her of drugging my food. Huh? What the? All you said is you were getting sleepy and that's how she replied? Bobby's face looked angry. Really? Then, in that case, could she actually be putting something in your food? Is the taste normal? Bobby asked me. Exactly what I had been thinking. Around the time I started getting tired, the taste of Sylvia's food changed. Something tastes really weird. Recently, Sylvia has also been obsessive about getting me to take baths after dinner. Bobby replied, Isn't that all a bit strange? Next time you feel sleepy, don't take a bath. Bobby was concerned about me. From then I tried taking showers before dinner, but Sylvia wouldn't let me. Why? I put effort into making sure dinner is ready so that you can eat as soon as you get home, but you're trying to take a shower first, is what she'd say. So I had no choice but to eat dinner as soon as I got home every day. It was Friday night. I had plans to hang out with Bobby the next day. Sylvia had been recording videos for YouTube the whole day, and it didn't seem like she would come home until late at night. Sylvia had been out since the morning, so I thought I would start preparing a light dinner for us. But she had prepared dinner for us in advance. That was fancier than usual. Steak with a creamy garlic sauce, minestrone soup, and so on. All foods with very rich flavors. But no matter how strong the flavors were, they couldn't hide a strong bitter taste in all the food. As I was eating, I began to sob. Sylvia heard me and ran over. What? Is the food gross? Are you trying to make me feel bad? Sylvia looked at me grumpily, and I did my best to finish all my food. I managed to eat everything, but then I suddenly felt sick. Sylvia looked satisfied with herself. She then began urging me to take a bath. At that moment, I remembered what Bobby had said to me before. Next time you feel sleepy, don't take a bath. I nodded to Sylvia, and then I went into our bedroom, changed clothes, and crashed into bed. It was still only 8 p.m., so it wasn't normal for me to be this sleepy. I thought I should talk to Bobby about it, and I closed my eyes. When I woke up the next day, it was already 10 a.m. My eyelids felt heavy, but I was supposed to meet Bobby at 11 a.m., so I rushed to get ready. When I woke up, Sylvia was already out of the house. After doing the bare minimum to prepare myself, I left to go meet Bobby. Bobby was already waiting for me. After meeting up, we headed towards the cafe we planned to eat at, and suddenly my mind went blank. The next time I opened my eyes, what I saw was a white ceiling I didn't recognize, and Bobby sitting next to me with a worried expression on his face. I started trying to get up, and Bobby realized I had regained consciousness. Thank God, he said, and called for a nurse. According to Bobby, I collapsed right as we were about to enter the cafe. I suddenly had stopped talking, and when he turned around, he saw me on the floor. He quickly called an ambulance. A doctor and nurse came to my hospital room and explained what had happened. I thought that maybe it was from overexhaustion, but hearing what the doctor said took my breath away. Mike, we found traces of a huge amount of sleeping pills in your body. What? Sleeping pills? I had no recollection of taking any medication for sleeping. In my 30 years of life, I had never bought or taken any. Could you have mistakenly taken them, thinking they were something else? The doctor asked me, but all I could do was shake my head. In the meantime, the doctor decided it would be best for me to sleep in the hospital that night so they could observe my condition. When the paramedics first came to pick me up and asked Bobby what had happened, he told them, It's possible that his wife gave him sleeping pills, so they tested my blood for drugs as soon as I got to the hospital. The hospital had called Sylvia, and she showed up in my room a bit later. What? I heard you had collapsed, but looking at you now, you seem fine. Sylvia didn't appear worried at all. She seemed to say she wished she hadn't come. Bobby heard what she said and glared at her frighteningly. Hey, how can you act like that after your husband collapsed? Sylvia asked. Who the hell is this guy? With an annoyed look on her face. I explained to Sylvia, This is my friend Bobby, who I was supposed to hang out with today. I meet up with him often. She finally remembers who Bobby was. Ah, your friend. Then I'll leave him to take care of you and head off, she said. As Sylvia was walking out of my hospital room, she stopped. Ah, right. I will be doing an overnight shoot tomorrow. When you get discharged, I won't be at home. Do your best on your own, she said. I was disgusted by Sylvia's attitude, and so was Bobby. What the? When someone's husband is hospitalized, shouldn't they prioritize that over work? Bobby said angrily. I'm going to get something to drink, Bobby said and stomped off to the hospital store. There was only one conclusion I could reach about the sleeping pills they found in my body. Sylvia must have drugged the food she cooked for me, but I didn't have proof. I felt scared to be with Sylvia, so I wanted to divorce her. But if she really had drugged me, I couldn't leave things like this. There was bound to be evidence somewhere at home. I thought to myself as I laid in my hospital bed. The door to my room suddenly opened with a huge bang. Shocked, I looked at the door and saw Bobby standing there holding out his phone. You scared me. Why are you in such a rush? In between breaths, Bobby said, Listen to this. And he handed me his phone. Wondering why he was so panicked, I listened to the voice that was recorded on his phone. Hey, how is Mike? Is it time to prepare his funeral? It was the voice of a young man. Next, I heard Sylvia's voice. No, he was fine. I put so many pills in his food, but it didn't go as planned. If he had taken a bath as I had told him to, he definitely would have drowned. The sleeping pills I gave you helped, right? No, they found out about them, so I can't use them anymore. How can I get his life insurance? Their conversation and laughter continued on. It was a voice I had heard before. Look, I took photos. That rumor that he hits on people's wives was true. In the photo, Bobby showed me one of Bobby's and I's juniors from work. His name is Georgie. Having heard Georgie and Sylvia's conversation, my anger at Sylvia grew more and more. The two of them had that conversation in the waiting room on the first floor of the hospital. Bobby sent me the recording he had made. The next day, he was discharged, and I went to a private investigator's office. A few days later, the detective reported back to me. Georgie and Sylvia were having an affair. I had photos of them going to Georgie's house and entering hotels together. I couldn't believe that Sylvia was receiving the sleeping pills she put in my food from Georgie. I spoke to a lawyer and decided to sue Sylvia and Georgie for compensation. I sent all the documents and proof to both of their families' houses. Since there had been a risk that I could lose my life, I decided to claim $23,000 from each of them for emotional distress. I told Sylvia that I was going to my parents' house, and I didn't return to our home for a while. I was worried she might try and do something to me again. I explained everything to my parents, and they told me there was no way I could return to Sylvia, and told me to divorce her immediately. I stayed at my parents' home for a while. Sylvia was carefree and just told me to rest. Some time passed. She must have received all the documents from my lawyer at her parents' house because she left me a terrifying voicemail while I was at work. When I finished work, she called me again. When I picked up the phone, her voice shocked me so much I nearly dropped my phone. Hey, what's the meaning of this? Divorce and monetary compensation? You haven't told me anything about this. Why was she surprised? Exactly as it says, those are my conditions so that I don't report you to the police. Don't you think I'm being really nice? Sylvia told me she wouldn't divorce me, but I began to explain. As a side note, I decided not to report Sylvia to the police when my lawyer told me how much money I could claim from her as compensation. If you're gone, I'll be broke. What will I do? I won't have your life insurance either. If you divorce me, I won't be able to survive. All she said were self-centered things like that. I can't live with someone who's trying to kill me. I told her, but Sylvia repeated that she won't divorce me. If you have anything more to say, talk to my lawyer, I said, hung up, and blocked her number. Georgie began skipping work without notice. I had also told Georgia that I wouldn't report him to the police in exchange for monetary compensation. His parents were incredibly shocked and they contacted my lawyer. They told my lawyer they would pay immediately. Knowing that their son had tried to take someone's life, they eventually forced him to quit his job. They took the matters into their own hands. Afterwards, I heard that Sylvia's parents took Sylvia to the police. They sent the compensation I requested to my lawyer in a single payment, as well as filled out Sylvia's portions of the divorce papers. They made sure that Sylvia would take responsibility for what she had done. My in-laws sent me a very apologetic letter as well. In the letter, they wrote that Sylvia had done something horrible and that they were incredibly sorry. They said they would definitely punish her and make sure that she pays them back for the compensation they were sending me. My in-laws were very upright people, so it was a shame that I had to cut ties with them because of this. According to rumors I heard later, when Sylvia turned herself into the police, she told them about Georgie. Since I hadn't reported him, I didn't think it would get to that, but I felt refreshed. After my condition improved, Bobby and I began hanging out more often, and I began living a very fun life. I'm so grateful to Bobby for everything. I hope that one day I can support him the way he supported me.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.